My son told me I had 3 weeks to leave his house. I had spent my entire life protecting him, supporting him, and giving him everything I had. But the day I walked out with 2 old suitcases, I realized something heartbreaking. I had given my son everything, except the one thing he was about to take away from me, my sense of belonging. I thought losing my home was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. Because what happened next changed my life forever. Welcome to Lily Tale Talk English, where every story has a heart, a lesson, and a surprise waiting for you. As you enjoy the story, you'll also improve your English naturally through simple conversations and everyday vocabulary. So sit back, relax, and stay with me until the very end, because the ending may not be what you expect. He believed that the son he loved so deeply would always stand by him through every difficult moment in life. But one unexpected event made him question everything he believed about his son, love, and trust. What happened next took him through emotions, painful decisions, and a lesson he would never forget. Now let's begin today's story. My name is Mr. Churchill. I am 68 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that if you gave your family everything you had, they would always be there for you. I was wrong. One rainy Tuesday morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table when my son, William, looked at me and said something I never thought I would hear. "Dad, I think you need to find somewhere else to live." For a few seconds, I thought I had misunderstood him. I looked at his face. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He simply looked uncomfortable, as if he were talking about something small and unimportant. But to me, those words felt like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. "Somewhere else?" I asked quietly. William nodded. His wife Diana was standing near the kitchen window. She didn't look at me. I looked from one of them to the other. This was the same house where I had spent years helping William build his life. The same home where I had believed I would always have a place. And now my own son was asking me to leave. But to understand how I reached that painful morning, you need to know where our story began. Years earlier, when William was only 6 years old, his mother died after a long illness. I still remember the day I told him she was gone. He stood beside me in the hospital hallway, holding my hand tightly. "Dad, when is Mom coming home?" I couldn't answer. I wanted to tell him everything would be fine, but I knew it wouldn't. From that day on, William and I became a family of 2. I had never planned to raise a child alone, but life does not always ask what you planned. It simply gives you a new road and expects you to walk it. I worked wherever I could. During the day, I repaired machines at a small factory. In the evenings, I drove a delivery van for a local store. Some nights, I came home so tired that I could barely take off my shoes. But William was always waiting for me. Sometimes he would sit at the kitchen table with his school books open. "Dad, can you help me with this?" Even when I didn't understand the homework, I tried. Sometimes we laughed because neither of us knew the answer. Those were difficult years, but they were also some of the happiest years of my life. I saved every extra dollar for William. When he needed new clothes, I bought them. When he wanted to join the school football team, I found a way to pay the fee. When he dreamed about going to college, I quietly saved money for him. I never told him how many things I went without. I didn't want my son to grow up feeling like a burden. I wanted him to believe that his father could handle anything. Years passed. William grew into a hardworking young man. He went to college and later found a good job at a technology company. The day he received his first paycheck, he came home with a huge smile. "Dad, I finally did it." I smiled. "You did it, son." He hugged me. "I couldn't have done it without you." Those words meant more to me than money ever could. I thought all my sacrifices had been worth it. Then William met Diana. She was intelligent, confident, and very careful about the life she wanted. When William first introduced her to me, I welcomed her. I wanted my son to be happy. I treated Diana like a member of the family. I invited her to dinner. I remembered her birthday. When they got married, I gave them money I had been saving for my own future. I told myself that helping my son was more important than keeping money for myself. After their wedding, William came to me one evening. "Dad, why don't you move in with us?" I looked at him in surprise. "I don't want to get in the way of your marriage." "You won't," he said. "There's plenty of room, and I don't like knowing you're living alone." I smiled. "Are you sure?" "Of course." So I sold my small house. It wasn't a large home, but I had lived there for almost 30 years. Every room carried memories. There was a mark on the wall where William had once measured his height. There was an old chair where I used to read him bedtime stories. There were photographs everywhere. Selling that house was painful, but I believed I was moving toward a better future. I used part of the money from the sale to help William and Diana with their mortgage. William hugged me when I gave them the money. "Dad, I'll never forget this." I believed him. For a while, everything was peaceful. I helped around the house. I cooked sometimes. I fixed small things whenever they broke. I tried to stay out of their way. But slowly, Diana began to change. At first, the changes were so small that I ignored them. If I watched television in the living room, she would suddenly leave. If I joined them for dinner, she would say she wasn't hungry anymore. If I offered to help, she would smile and say, "It's okay, we can manage." Her words were polite, but her eyes were different. I noticed. I simply didn't want to believe what I was seeing. One evening, I was walking toward the kitchen when I heard Diana speaking quietly. "William, this isn't working." I stopped. There was silence. Then William answered, "I know." My heart began beating faster. Diana continued, "We need our own space." Another silence. Then William said something that I could barely hear. "We'll talk about it." I walked back to my room before they could see me. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours. I kept telling myself that they might be talking about something else. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was becoming too sensitive. After all, William was my son. Surely he wouldn't abandon the man who had spent his entire life protecting him. The next morning, I woke up early and prepared breakfast. I made William's favorite eggs and toast. When he came into the kitchen, he looked tired. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, son." He sat down. Diana joined him a few minutes later. Nobody talked much. I tried to make conversation. "How was work yesterday?" "Fine," William answered. "Busy?" "Yeah." Then silence returned. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong it was. After breakfast, Diana picked up her handbag. I'll wait in the car. She walked outside. William remained at the table. He took a deep breath. Dad, we need to talk. My stomach tightened. I already knew, but I still hoped I was wrong. We sat across from each other. For a moment, William couldn't look at me. Finally, he spoke. Diana and I think you should move out. I stared at him. Move out? He nodded. It's nothing personal. I almost laughed. Nothing personal? I had given him my youth. I had worked through exhaustion for him. I had sold my home to help him, and now he was telling me that leaving my home was nothing personal. William, I said quietly, you asked me to come here. I know. I sold my house because you said you wanted me close. I know, Dad. Then where am I supposed to go? He looked down at the table. We're giving you 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I sat there without moving. I wanted him to look at me. I wanted him to remember the little boy who once held my hand every night because he was afraid of the dark. But he didn't. William, I whispered, I don't have another home. His voice became softer. You'll find something. Those 4 words stayed with me. You'll find something. I had spent my whole life finding things for him. A way to pay his school fees. A way to buy his books. A way to keep food on the table. A way to make sure he never felt the pain I was feeling now. But when I needed him, all he could say was, You'll find something. I went to my room and closed the door. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry. I didn't cry because I was leaving the house. I cried because I suddenly understood that the son I had spent my life protecting had become a stranger. Over the next 3 weeks, I searched for a small apartment. Everything was too expensive. My savings were limited. Most of the money I had received from selling my house was already gone. I never asked William to return it. It was money I had given him willingly. At least that's what I told myself. The final morning arrived. I packed my clothes into 2 old suitcases. I carefully wrapped a photograph of William and his mother in a piece of clothing. It was one of the few things I could not leave behind. Before walking out, I stood in the hallway for a long moment. I looked at the kitchen, the living room, the small garden outside. So many memories lived there. But suddenly none of it felt like mine. William was waiting near the front door. I'll carry your bags, he said. I shook my head. No, I can do it. He looked down. Diana didn't come outside. I pulled my suitcases toward the sidewalk. Then I stopped. I turned around. Some part of me still hoped William would run after me. Maybe he would say he had changed his mind. Maybe he would say, Dad, come back. But the door remained closed. I waited a few more seconds. Nothing happened, so I started walking. I had no idea where I was going, and for the first time in my life, I was completely alone. That was the day I lost my home. But I didn't yet know that losing my home would be only the beginning of the hardest chapter of my life. Because what happened next would force me to discover something I had forgotten for many years. How to live for myself. For the first few hours after leaving William's house, I simply walked. I had 2 old suitcases in my hands, but somehow they felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. I passed restaurants, shops, and busy streets. People were going to work. Children were walking to school. Cars were moving through the traffic. Everyone seemed to have somewhere to go. Everyone except me. I finally sat down on a bench outside a small bus station. I placed my suitcases beside me and stared at the people around me. I didn't know where I would sleep that night. That thought frightened me more than I wanted to admit. I had spent my entire life making sure William was safe. Now I wasn't even sure where I would be safe myself. An hour later, I walked into the bus station and asked about cheap places to stay. The woman behind the desk gave me a few names. I called them one by one. The prices were too high. My savings would not last long. Eventually, an elderly man sitting nearby heard me talking. He quietly told me about a community shelter a few miles away. "It isn't fancy," he said, "but they give people a bed and a hot meal." I thanked him. That evening, I arrived at the shelter. A kind woman named Mrs. Helen Brooks welcomed me at the front desk. She looked at my suitcases and then at my tired face. "Is this your first night here?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't ask too many questions. Instead, she handed me a clean blanket. "You can rest tonight, Mr. Churchill." Those simple words almost broke me. Someone who didn't even know me was showing me more kindness than I had expected. That night, I lay on a narrow bed in a room filled with strangers. I listened to people breathing quietly around me. I looked at the ceiling, and for the first time, I allowed myself to think about what had happened. I wasn't there because I had lost my job. I wasn't there because of a natural disaster. I wasn't there because I had made some terrible mistake. I was there because my own son had decided that his father no longer belonged in his home. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I folded my blanket carefully and walked toward the dining room. Volunteers were preparing breakfast. I saw people carrying trays, washing dishes, and cleaning tables. One of the volunteers smiled at me. "You can sit down. Breakfast will be ready soon." I smiled politely. "Thank you." But I didn't want to sit. I wanted to do something. "Is there any work I can help with?" The volunteer looked surprised. "We always need help." That simple answer changed something inside me. I began helping in the dining room. I wiped tables. I washed dishes. I carried boxes. I served meals. The work wasn't easy, but I didn't complain. For the first time since leaving William's house, I felt useful again. Days slowly became weeks. I created a routine. Wake up early. Work at the shelter. Eat a simple meal. Return to my small bed. Sleep. Repeat. It wasn't the life I had imagined for myself. But it was a life, and I was determined not to let shame destroy me. One afternoon, while I was carrying a box of donated clothes, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Churchill?" I stopped. I turned around. Standing there was Samuel Grant, an old friend I hadn't seen in many years. We had worked together at the factory when we were younger. He looked at me in disbelief. "Is that really you?" I gave him a small smile. "Hello, Samuel." He walked toward me. "What are you doing here?" I looked down at the box in my hands. "Helping." Samuel looked around. Then he looked at my simple clothes and the shelter badge hanging from my shirt. His expression changed. "You're staying here, aren't you?" For a moment, I couldn't answer. Then I nodded. Yes. Samuel's eyes became wet. What happened? I didn't want to tell him. I had spent weeks hiding the truth from everyone. But Samuel had known me for almost 30 years. I finally said, "My son asked me to leave his house." Samuel stared at me. "William?" I nodded. He shook his head slowly. "I don't understand." "Neither do I." Samuel stepped closer. "You always talked about that boy with pride." "I still do." He looked at me sadly. "You still love him?" I smiled. "He's my son." Samuel put his hand on my shoulder. "You've spent your whole life taking care of other people. Maybe it's time you let someone take care of you." I wanted to disagree, but I couldn't. Before leaving, Samuel gave me his phone number. "Call me if you need anything." I thanked him. That small conversation stayed in my mind for days. Maybe I had spent too many years believing that being strong meant never needing anyone. Maybe strength was also knowing when to accept help. A few weeks later, Samuel called me. He had heard about a small community center that needed someone to organize donations. "The pay isn't great," he said, "but it's a real job." I immediately accepted. The work was simple. I organized food, clothes, books, and household items for families who needed them. But I treated every person with respect. I knew what it felt like to lose your dignity. I didn't want anyone else to feel that way. The manager, Mr. Daniel Reed, noticed my work. One afternoon, he came into the storage room. "Mr. Churchill, you have a gift." I looked at him. "A gift?" "You make people feel welcome." I smiled. Maybe because I know what it feels like not to feel welcome. He didn't ask what I meant. He simply nodded. My first paycheck wasn't much. But when I held it in my hands, I felt proud. It was the first money I had earned for myself in a long time. I didn't spend it. I saved it. Every week I put a little money aside. Slowly my savings began to grow. I started thinking about getting my own place. Not a big house. Not anything expensive. Just somewhere small where I could close the door and know that nobody could tell me I didn't belong there. But I still thought about William every night. I wondered if he was eating well. I wondered if he was sleeping peacefully. I wondered if he ever thought about me. I missed the little boy he used to be. I missed his laughter. I missed the way he used to call me when he needed advice. But I didn't call him. I wasn't trying to punish him. I simply didn't know what to say. Then, one cold afternoon, something happened that I never expected. I was organizing boxes at the community center when I heard a voice behind me. "Dad?" My hands froze. I slowly turned around. William was standing in the doorway. He looked completely different. His face was tired. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were red. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Finally, he walked toward me. "I've been looking for you." I looked at him quietly. "You found me." He glanced around the room. He saw the boxes, the donated clothes, the food supplies, the people waiting for help. Then he looked at me. "You're living here?" "Yes." His face changed. "I didn't know," I answered calmly. "You never asked." He lowered his head. "I thought you had found an apartment." I couldn't afford one. Silence filled the room. William looked ashamed. Dad, I'm sorry. I wanted to believe him. Part of me still wanted to reach out and hug him, but another part remembered standing outside his front door with 2 suitcases. I remembered waiting for him to call me back. I remembered walking away alone. So I said, "An apology is important, William, but it doesn't erase what happened." He nodded. I know. His eyes filled with tears. I've been thinking about everything. I said nothing. I was wrong. Those 3 words were difficult for him to say, but they were exactly what I had needed to hear. He stayed for a few minutes. Before leaving, he turned toward me. "Can I see you again?" I looked at my son. Yes. But I didn't tell him when. I wasn't ready. I needed time. After William left, I returned to my work. My hands were busy, but my mind was somewhere else. For years, I had believed my life was over when I lost my home. Now I understood something different. Losing my home had forced me to discover who I was without William. I was still a father. I was still a hardworking man. I still had something to give. And most importantly, I still had a future. A few weeks later, William began leaving messages on my phone. "Dad, I hope you're okay. Another day. I miss you." Then, "I wish I could go back and change that morning." I listened to every message. Sometimes I replied. Sometimes I didn't. I needed to know whether his regret was real. One evening, Samuel sat beside me outside the community center. "Have you forgiven him?" I looked at the sunset. "I don't know. You still love him?" I smiled sadly. "I always will." Samuel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Forgiving someone doesn't mean pretending they never hurt you." His words stayed with me. A few days later, William asked me to meet him at a small park. I agreed. When I arrived, he was sitting alone on a bench. It was the same park where I had taken him when he was a child. For a moment, I could almost see the little boy running across the grass. William stood when he saw me. "Thank you for coming." I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, William said, "Dad, I need to tell you the truth." I looked at him. "The day I asked you to leave, I told myself I was doing it for my marriage." He took a deep breath. "But the truth is, I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of losing Diana." I remained silent. I thought if I made you leave, everything between us would become peaceful. He wiped his eyes. But it didn't. "What happened?" "My marriage became worse." He looked at the ground. "And every day I thought about you." Then he reached into his pocket and took out an envelope. "I want you to have this." I opened it. Inside was a check. I stared at the amount. It was almost exactly what I had given William and Diana when I sold my house. "I sold my car," he said quietly. "I wanted to return your money." I looked at him. "I never wanted your money, William." "I know." His voice broke. "You wanted your son." I didn't answer. Because he was right. Tears rolled down his face. "I failed you, Dad." For the first time, I saw something different in my son. There were no excuses. He wasn't blaming Diana. He wasn't blaming circumstances. He was accepting responsibility. Then he said something that surprised me. "Diana and I are getting divorced." I looked at him. Why? At first, I blamed her for everything. He shook his head. But she didn't force me to send you away. He looked directly into my eyes. I made that choice. His voice trembled. I was the one who closed the door. I looked away. Those words hurt. But they also brought me a strange sense of peace. Because William was finally telling the truth. We didn't fix everything that day. Some wounds were too deep. But we began again. Slowly. One conversation at a time. One visit at a time. One honest apology at a time. William visited me every weekend. Sometimes we ate simple meals together. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes neither of us knew what to say. But little by little, the distance between us became smaller. With the money William returned and the savings from my job, I finally rented a small apartment. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't large. But it was mine. There was a tiny kitchen, 2 windows, and a small balcony. I placed 3 flower pots on it. A week later, William came to help me move my things. He carried the last box into the apartment and looked around. It feels like home, he said. I smiled. Home isn't always about the size of the house. I looked at him. It's about feeling that you belong there. William's eyes filled with tears. Dad, thank you for giving me another chance. I walked toward him and hugged my son. For a moment, I remembered the little boy who once held my hand in the dark. I became your father once, I whispered. But today, I think we have both learned how to become a family again. He held me tightly. Neither of us wanted to let go. That evening, after William left, I sat alone on my small balcony. The sun was disappearing behind the buildings. The flowers moved gently in the evening wind. I thought about everything I had lost. My old house. My savings. My trust. For a while, I had even lost hope. But I had not lost myself. I had learned that sometimes the people we love can hurt us deeply. And sometimes the only way to heal is to stop waiting for someone else to save us. I had spent my entire life protecting William. But when he walked away from me, I learned how to protect my own heart. I didn't become bitter. I didn't stop loving my son. I simply learned that love should never mean losing yourself. If you still have parents who love you, don't wait for the perfect moment to appreciate them. Call them. Visit them. Ask how they are. Give them a hug. Because sometimes the people who quietly stand beside us for years are the same people we don't realize we need until they are gone. A home can be rebuilt. Money can be earned again. Trust can sometimes return. But the heart of someone who loves you deeply should never be treated as if it has no value. And that is the lesson my son and I learned the hardest way. Sometimes we spend so much of our lives loving and supporting the people we care about that we forget to care for ourselves. Mr. Churchill's story reminds us that love should never mean losing your own identity, dignity, or self-worth. Family relationships can sometimes bring deep pain, and forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened. It means learning from the pain and choosing not to let it control the rest of your life. Most importantly, never believe that your life is over just because someone you love walks away. You can lose a home, lose trust, and even lose hope for a while, but you can still rebuild your life, find your strength, and begin again. What would you do if your own son asked you to leave his home after everything you had done for him? Do you think Mr. Churchill was right to give his son another chance? Why or why not? Do you believe that forgiveness means forgetting the pain someone caused you? What do you think was the most important lesson Mr. Churchill learned from his experience? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you would have done in Mr. Churchill's situation. Thank you for watching Lilytale Talk English. I hope today's story touched your heart and helped you improve your English in a simple and enjoyable way. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Until next time, keep learning, keep believing, and remember, every story has the power to change a life. See you in the next story.